Good morning. Welcome to Simply Remarkable live broadcast. Glad you can start our holiday long weekend together because you're in for a treat. Because today we have the man known as the Apostle of Appreciation and one of today's most influential thought leaders in workplace culture and leadership. Chester Elton is in the studio, so let's go. Greetings to our live audience coming to us from LinkedIn, X, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. We look forward to this weekly conversation so that you can meet our guest speaker and get to know them as personally as we do. We want you to join in the conversation with us. Send us your questions, comments, and we'd love to hear from you. Now, today's featured guest is global award-winning speaker, TEDx speaker, and #1 New York Times bestselling author. He's a member of Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches, and he's an executive coach. Also co-founder of the Culture Works, Chester Elton. He's going to bring us today energy, fun, and real-world experiences that you can use right away. Thanks so much for coming, Chester. We welcome you here. Now, normally you're out traveling, but where are you coming to us from today?
So I'm in my home office in Summit, New Jersey. And Sue, it's always great to spend time with you. I don't want to be trite, but you are remarkable.
Well, thank you, Chester. I appreciate that. Whew. Because you are too. And we just thank you so much. Now, this time flies by so fast. So we're just going to jump in and get started. Now, Chester, you've studied workplace culture extensively. What's the most surprising thing you've discovered about how gratitude impacts team performance?
Yeah, great question, Sue. You know, it's interesting with my co-author, Adrian Gostick, who also is a brilliant speaker, by the way.
Right up there, we've got it on our bookshelf.
There you go. Is the idea that what are the building blocks of a great culture? What are the building blocks of a great team or a great leader? And it always came back to gratitude for a lot of reasons. One is more than ever, people want to know that their opinion matters, their voice is heard. And one of the ways to encourage that is just simple acts of gratitude, simple acts of recognition. You know, I think great leaders are asked great questions, and one of the best questions a leader can ask to build a great culture is, what do you think? What do you think, right? We sometimes think of gratitude and recognition as being an event, a plaque, a watch, something like that. It's not. It's what's embedded in your culture every day. We talk about habits of gratitude, traditions, tokens, rituals. And it's so interesting to me. Habits build great cultures, and great cultures deliver big results. Does that make sense?
Say that again.
So, great habits build great cultures, and
Okay.
great cultures deliver big results. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That is so good because gratitude wasn't always part of our leadership training and skills, but I see so much today that that's a key ingredient that leaders need to share and to have. And I thank you for making sure that is part of what you teach, what you train, what you share. And I love the book, everybody. Yes, it's a #1 best-selling New York Times. Yes, you need to have it in your library because it really gives you that special part of when you're in a situation. It really has some really key things. So thank you for sharing that. Now, you work with leaders worldwide. what's the one leadership skill that used to be optional before, but now is essentially, absolutely essential? And why is that?
Well, first and foremost is their ability to handle change. Change is so, I mean, it's coming at us faster than ever. Found some fun numbers that I think you'll get a kick out of too, is that it took 12 years for mobile phones and then, of course, smartphones to hit 50 million users. So 12 years. It took Facebook 4 years to get to 50 million users. But Pokemon Go, it took 19 days. So, change is just coming at us so fast and furious. So your ability to handle that volatility and uncertainty, right, is key. And to me, the one attribute that is absolutely essential for top leaders right now is curiosity. What's next? Yes, this looks great. And what if? What if? I'm an amateur historian, Sue, and I love reading. David McCullough is one of my favorite authors on American history and on and on. And when you think about it, the world was shaped by curiosity. Those pioneers,
Definitely.
those adventurers that said, "What's over that hill?" Or if we just sail out as far as we can, what will we find? And I've taken a deep dive into the Stoics. I don't know if you're a fan, Sue, but the great Roman, philosopher Seneca said that curiosity is wisdom. No one can know everything, but the curious can know many things. And so, if you're asking me what's really necessary in leaders, it's the ability to handle change that's coming faster than ever, and that continuous curiosity. How does that resonate with you?
That is fabulous because I've seen it out there and in my real world. You're right. Change comes fast, but I want to be that lifelong learner. And I'm curious, what next? What can we do next? What is
Right.
it? What if? And Lisa, our broadcast director, will attest to this in our staff. We're always asking those questions because we know it's going to come up and we want to see what we can do, So you're right. We know, as a leader, we never had to do that. Change wasn't as fast. You could adapt to it. You could, you know, now it's like, okay, you adapt to it today, then it changes tomorrow. All right.
You had
So
time.
that's kind of where we're going. And
Yeah.
curiosity is amazing. I think that is a definite thing that people need to find out. And I too love history. And I think the ones that do probably are big readers because they say leaders need to be big readers. Yes. Uh, we'll find that. We'll find that. We'll take advantage of that. So
You,
thanks
you
for
know,
sharing that.
I got to share another quick story with you, Sue, on that
Great.
note. It was a piece of advice I got a long, long time ago from one of my professors. So you and I both love history, and I was needing an elective course when I was at university. And there was a class that said it was the history of the world in one semester. And I went, you can't pass that up. The history of
Woo!
the world in one semester. And while it was fascinating, and the professor was very energetic and just loved to teach, he gave me this piece of advice. He said, you should always have a book on your nightstand that has nothing to do with work and nothing to do with school. We were all students at the time. He said, it'll fuel your curiosity. And he said, look, I know you're all poor students, but at the Student Union building in the bookstore, there's always the dollar table, right?
Mhm.
And you can afford a buck. Well, I took his advice, and there was a book in the dollar table called The First Casualty by Philip Knightley. And it was the history of war correspondence, which I found fascinating. One of the first war correspondents was one of my heroes, Winston Churchill, in the Crimean War. The message is that the first casualty of war is truth. And how is that reported? I still have it in my library. I will never give that book away. The point is it's helped me to, whether it's a fiction, whether it's history, whether it's a self-help book or whatever it is, that mental break to say, well, what about this stuff has really served me well. It's helped me be more curious about history. It's helped me be more curious about different personalities as you read biographies and so on. So your point about good leaders or good readers, I think is very true. Fuel that and have a book next to you that has nothing to do with anything else you're doing, just because it's interesting.
That's fabulous because both my husband, who's my CFO, we read a lot. We've always been readers. And everyone says, you've got a big library. You're always, adding to it. I said, yeah. We've made it a commitment. We add a book, we have to take one and give it. Otherwise, we'd have them all over the house. But it's been something for us to be able to weather life.
Yeah.
To be able to keep going and know that we're in and be able to communicate with people. So it's really, so we're on tune there. And I think people out there need to, if they're not into that, they need to, really get into tune with what's really going on. And so that'll help them too. That's a biggie. Now, Chester's, for leaders managing remote, this is a big question I get asked all the time. And so when I do my shows, I kind of survey some people to get what questions they might like to hear answered. And this is always one. Address how leaders who are managing remote or hybrid teams, how do they maintain a sense of purpose and connection? It's always been, and it's going to be even more. Virtual is real. It's here to stay. So how do leaders manage that?
I think that's such an interesting question, Sue, because, during the pandemic, we all got very comfortable with virtual. And now there's the move to bring people back to the workplace. And I'm not opposed to that. I think, there's great value in being in the same room, breathing the same air, right? The thing about managing remote employees is now it's not just we're in the same zip code, we're just working remotely. You've got remote workers in Romania and Thailand and Singapore. So how do you keep them involved with the purpose? The best piece of advice I can give you is know their stories. Take time to get to know their stories. What are they passionate about? What are their hobbies? Have them tell you about their families and so on. When you know someone's story, it's a lot easier to engage them because you know what they value, you know what's important to them. So that's step one. Step two is just time. Spend time with them. So often in a virtual, we come in and we've got a deadline and we do it and everybody, okay, hi everybody, click, see ya, and it's over. Find ways to connect where you just literally spend time. It's like investors say, it's not timing the market that makes you wealthy, it's time in the market, right? The same advice I think is good for your teams is as much as you can, especially with your virtual people, because you don't have those moments where you can say, hey, let's go get a coffee, or what are you doing for lunch, right? Including them more in the casual part of business, I think is really helpful. So spending time with them, I think, is really important. First and foremost, though, know their stories. Once you know somebody's story, everything changes.
Even in person, I found that is so true as well. Just like my business, I make sure that every person I represent or every staff that works for me, I know them personally. I want to know their birthdays. I want to know about them. I want to get to know their families. I want to see more because that to me gives me a better understanding of how I can share with somebody else and value. And I want to share with people how valuable they are to me, And I think that's what leaders today, I can remember being in corporate, we weren't taught to be interactive with our employees. You were supposed to be the boss. And today, that's why our generations, that's not what they're wanting. They want that interconnection. And that's more of being kind of a servant leader in a way, because we're serving in a different capacity as well as actually getting the work done. So thanks for sharing that, because that's key. That's key. How do you believe in someone and help them if you don't know them?
100%.
And that's key. Thank you for sharing that, because I think people needed to hear that. They needed to hear that it's okay. It's okay to have that casual part of being a leader. Now, we all know that many organizations struggle with toxic or indifferent workplace cultures. What's one bold move that a leader can make to turn around any kind of dysfunctional culture? And how have you seen that play out? Is there just one thing they could do?
Well, yeah, obviously there's many things you can do. The first thing, first and foremost, is in a really toxic culture, what you're going to find is there are toxic people. And your job as a leader is to find out who those toxic people are and get rid of them as fast as you can. The fastest way to change a culture, change faces. I mean, I know sports analogies are overused, and they're overused because they work, right? You want to change a culture, you change the manager. You find that toxic player, and you get rid of them. So often, you'll find cultures where there is a toxic employee, and they'll say, yes, but she's been with us for 30 years, and she's quirky, and sure, she's grouchy, or he's just that way. Everybody knows how to work around him. Wrong. If you want a healthy, great culture, you've got to hire healthy and great people. So first and foremost is you've got to get rid of those toxic people, and literally as fast as you can, because what it does is it sends a message to everybody else that this behavior will not be tolerated. The more you've got somebody who's toxic, the more the blame transfers, right? Initially, everybody blames that toxic person, right? Because they're toxic, right? But the more it goes on, that gets transferred to the leaders, because the leaders can fix it and they've chosen not to. And the blame rests there. Secondly is, what are your values? What is your mission? What is your purpose? And very clear, and talk about it all the time. Everything we do is so that we can cure diseases, for example. Everything we do because we are problem solvers for, whatever the problem is. So those are two things I would do. But first and foremost, find who those toxic people are. And I know that sounds harsh, but you asked me what's the fastest way to do it. That's the fastest way to do it.
Well, I can remember corporate days myself. It's unfortunate that you have to do this, but sometimes you have to. And sometimes you just get handed the wrong people. And, I kind of made a commitment. Hey, you don't lie, cheat, or steal. And you're not going to interrupt things that do. And you don't want to be known as someone that has to go in there. But guess what? The others need it. The ones that are good and valuable.
Well,
they need you to do this. You have to face it. And if not, then you could lose them. And then what do you have? So thanks for sharing that. Anything else?
One other thing is, we often say, well, that's harsh. I got news for you. Those miserable, toxic people, you're doing them a favor. Like, they're not happy. Their coworkers aren't happy. You're not happy. Everybody's not happy. So in many ways, I think it's an act of kindness to say, look, this clearly isn't working for you, and it's really not working for us. Let's find a way to separate graciously. We're going to be kind about it. You just can't work here, And often I've seen people, it's a sigh of relief. Geez, thank you for ending this misery that is my life,
Right. And you're exactly right. Kindness. You can do it with kindness.
Sure.
I mean, you don't have to be brutal, but you do have to do it. And today, if we've impacted anything, is take a look at your workplace. Where do you spend your most time?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're going to spend as the leader with the toxic people, right? I mean, it just keeps happening. It just keeps happening. So thanks for sharing that and giving us the courage, because it is courage, and to face it and to do it. So thank you for that, because people need to do that. That's a bold move, but it's so needed. Now, we're talking about change. Oh, yeah. The pace of change in business is relentless, isn't it? I mean, it really is. From AI to remote work to whatever. What is one lesson that you have learned, maybe the hard way, either personally or from maybe a leader you've coached or known, that you wish you'd have known earlier?
That's a very deep question, Sue.
You can tell we do not rehearse this.
Yeah.
We do not let it go that way, because I said, life happens. You don't have a rehearsal most of the time.
Right. That's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, at the end where he says, what's the meaning of life? You asked me that question. I thought I should just say 42.
Right. Football's starting, and yes, we can just, play the play.
Yeah. So I think the thing that I would have loved to have early in my career was more of a mentor and a teacher. I think we make a lot of assumptions that on the job training, sink or swim was kind of the philosophy when I grew up. I think there are so many tools now and opportunities. I think really good cultures are cultures of teaching and coaching. You think back in your life of the people that had the biggest impact on you. I guarantee you there was a teacher in there was a mentor, there was a coach. And I wish earlier in my career I had taken advantage of that. I think there would have been people that would have done it for me had I asked. I don't know that I would have felt comfortable asking. At the same time, I think really good leaders develop other really good leaders. And the way they do that is through teaching and coaching and mentoring. So yeah, early in my career, the one thing I think that would have made a big difference, because I think it would have kept me from making a lot of mistakes, and being less worried about me and a little more conscious of the team, the customer, and so on. Early in your career, you're so egocentric. How am I going to get ahead? What can I do to get the promotion? And I think good coaching and good teaching can help you avoid a lot of those pitfalls. So yeah, on reflection, early in my career, I wish I had asked for more help.
But look what you've turned. Look, you made up for it. Okay? You really have. Thanks for sharing that, because, hey, it's honest and open, and now we know it works. That type of leadership works. And we have to train our people. I'm one on training, instead of you're just supposed to know.
Right. Figure it out.
I've talked about that. I'm going to do an article on that. You're just supposed to know. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's small or big. You're just supposed to know. And I'm like, we don't always learn that way. We don't have that same mentality to learn that way. So thanks for sharing that. Training is so key. It is so key. So key. Now, you've coached executives at Fortune 500. You've spoken to audiences worldwide. What's one question you wish someone like me would ask you in a live broadcast that they don't? And what's your answer?
I wish they'd ask me, more about why do you do what you do? What's your motivation? Yeah.
All right.
So there you go.
So tell us, why do you do what you do?
My co-author, Adrian Nagostik, and I, early on, one of our missions was we had both, at some point during our careers, had jobs that just made us miserable. The alarm would go off and our first reaction was to hit the snooze button. If I could just get 10 more minutes of sleep, I'd probably be okay. So why I do what I do is because I really do believe that you spend so much time at work, and you've heard this before, work should be enjoyable. A book that I continue to read and reread is by Clayton Christensen, How Will You Measure Your Life? And, he was a professor at the Harvard School of Business, passed away a few years ago now, but he would answer 3 questions. He'd say, you've got to ask yourself, how do you create a career that you love and that has purpose? Secondly, how will you develop deep and meaningful relationships on your journey? And then thirdly, how will you live a life of integrity? And then the kind of throwaways, and stay out of jail, which I think is also important, right? And so I think that purpose around helping leaders develop teams and cultures and whatnot, where people feel valued, their voices are heard, where they want to come to work, and they feel like what they do is important. Adrian and I talk about all-in cultures, and it's a place where people believe what they do matters, and they make a difference. And when they make a difference, it's noticed and it's celebrated. So I want people to wake up in the morning and throw their fist in the air and say, yes, I get to go to work today. That's my goal.
I agree. I want my staff and everyone that I know, hey, are you eager to get to work? Is this what you love doing? And that's key. That's key. Now, Chester, I told you this time flies. Tell us, what are you going to do today to be remarkable? As you are.
Well, it's something I do often, and I enjoy doing it. I'm going to make sure that at the end of the day, that my wife appreciates that I cleaned the kitchen and it was spotless. My wife is a wonderful cook. I refer to her more as the chef these days. She also has the ability to use almost every dish and spoon in the kitchen when she's making stuff. And so my little remarkable act of kindness is at the end of the day to make sure the dishwasher is going and her kitchen is spotless. So when it comes time for her to cook in the morning, which she loves to do, that everything's where it should be.
That is so kind. All right, ladies out there. All right, we've got some hints for you. Okay, how does that happen? Now, is there anything else that you would like to share with us today?
I'm a big fan of a random act of kindness every day. You can see my little bulb here. This is from Beekman 1802, by the way, which is the world's most wonderful soap made out of goat's milk. Check it out. A little free plug. I just think one kind act a day can change the world. It costs you nothing. It makes people feel valued. And you know what the ripple effect is? It makes you feel pretty good too. So I'd just like to leave you with, if you want to be remarkable today, do something kind for somebody for no other reason than it was just kind.
And it always makes you feel great.
Always.
To do it with no expectations. That's great. You have anything new coming up for us?
Yeah, we were working on our virtual coaching platform. Chester AI. You can chat with Chester. I'm a big fan of live coaching. I'm also a big fan of making it very scalable. As I mentioned, it's one of those things where had I had an advisor early on, executive coaches tend to be expensive. I'm expensive and worth every penny, by the way.
Yes, definitely.
The thing is what do you do when I'm not available? So I don't know if this is going to translate, but here's my little QR code for 30 days free. Chat with Chester.
See if it works, or we'll put it out there.
There you go. So anyway, but it's been really fun to be with you, Sue. Thank you so much for the invitation. The work you do is important. Your energy is contagious, and I'm just glad I know you.
Well, thank you so much that you had your valuable time here on a long holiday weekend that you would spend with us. We appreciate that. Now, to our audience, what are you going to do today to be remarkable? Did you hear something today that you could just go implement right away? Did you have some fun? Do you understand where Chester's coming from and things that you might do to be remarkable today and being kind? Now, we'd love to know, so just leave us a comment or comment all over our social media because we love to. And thanks so much, Chester, for joining us today. I wish for you a remarkable rest of 2025 and much success in helping leaders of today create and build exceptional workplace cultures, and foster team resilience and being that mentor and coach to them. And we can't wait to see the AI chat with Chester. That's so exciting. Now, event planners, did you hear something today that made you say, oh wow, this would be really, really key to our organization and what I'm looking for? Because Chester brings energy, insights, and connection, because that's what transforms and helps people and companies. Just drop a comment to us, event planners. I'd like to know, what's your biggest challenge now you face in planning an event? Love to personally connect with you and help you elevate your events. Now, you can visit our website. We have a new one coming soon, or you can contact me, or you can text me at 336-707-0859. Let's turn your event into an experience of a lifetime. That's what I love doing. And thanks to everyone joining us here today. I love what I get to do every day. When I walk into this yellow office, I am ready to go. And so let's be remarkable together. Give me a call.
Take care, everybody. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Now remember to continue to pray and support those who are recovering from all the massive things that have come to us. The devastating effects of the recent Hurricane Erin, the Texas and North Carolina floods, Hurricane Helene that we are still recovering from here in North Carolina. It's going to be a long time in the California fires. There's so many things, but we need to remember to pray and support for these people so that they will not be forgotten. Wishing you a happy Labor Day. Be happy and see you here right next week. And our special guest will be mental health comedian Frank King, who will be here to kick off National Suicide Prevention Month. You won't want to miss this life-saving conversation. Again, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.